Um, so normally on Wednesdays, London has basketball at 7, so we have to eat at 6. But we are late eaters. We're like 8:30 p.m. eaters.
Oh, okay.
So, or maybe more like 7:30, 8 p.m. because the boys usually go to bed by 8:30. But we're late eaters. We're not 6 p.m. eaters. So normally we're eating at 6 p.m. But I told Wes, I was like, I have a 5 o'clock meeting, so you're gonna have to figure dinner out for y'all.
I
So,
know. I knew this was going to be a weird time and I felt
oh,
bad,
it's
but I
fine.
really thought she would be here.
I
So
know.
I did start recording. So I'll just fill people in
Okay.
on that. I figure I'll just include that about your dinner. Who doesn't want to know a little bit of behind the scenes real life?
Listen,
I'm such an old lady. I really like eating.
glamorous.
I like eating by 6:30. Okay. And
Yeah.
this next sentence is what's really going to make you realize what an old lady I am, because I want to let my food digest before I go to bed. And I
Oh,
do go
yeah.
to bed early also. So I
Yeah.
can't, if I ate at 8:30, I would be going to bed like 2 seconds later. That's not good.
See, so I am letting mine digest because I probably go to bed at midnight. So
Yeah,
we're
that
eating
makes
late, but we
sense.
go to bed late. I
Well,
just have never
that's like
slept
Brooks. He
long.
eats at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock too, and then he's in bed at 12:30 or 1. Oh.
Yeah. And then I get up at 6. So it's just,
Oh my
I think,
gosh.
I know.
I cannot.
Yeah.
I wish I could survive on 6 hours of sleep.
I have always been that way. Yeah, my grandma was like that though. So I don't know if it's a
Uh,
genetic thing or what. I've never been a sleeper. I love to sleep.
I do
Love
too. I
sleep,
do.
and I just don't get to do much of it.
Okay,
So
you just mentioned your grandma. Did I tell you that I did the 23andMe thing?
no.
Okay,
Ooh,
so
tell me
mine,
about it.
so then Brooks and I were like, okay, before we get our tests back, write down what you think you are. So I did, and I knew based on surnames that I was probably Irish, definitely had some English, and I threw one of my grandparents is from like the New Orleans area, so I figured I probably had a little French or something in there too. So anyway, as you know, with my skin tone and my hair and everything, it came back exactly what you would think. Just English Irish was, I think it was like 65% or something. So we were joking, we're like, basically my parents are cousins, and because that's like
Yeah.
all of my blood. But anyway, so then Brooks got his like a week later, and he really thought, so his dad's side of the family is a little ambiguous. It's like, what's going on over there? And they thought that they had some Native American in there.
Yeah.
That's what they'd always thought. Maybe some Cherokee, who knows? But he came back 28% Ashkenazi Jew. And that means, yeah,
Whoa.
like from like the Germany area. And so I did like a quick little bit of research on Ashkenazi Zoo, and I'm probably butchering the name. So sorry if you are Jewish. I do not mean to offend you. But it was like, so this type of Jew, like you can trace your ancestry back to a group of like, it was either 300 or 3,000 people. So there's like this
Wow.
really, really specific group of
That's
people that they came
fun.
from. And that's a pretty big percentage to have not
Yeah.
even known that any of your like great grandparents were
Yeah.
that. Anyway, so I just thought it was cool, like to be Jewish. And
So
that's a
did
big
he
chunk.
have any Native American pop up?
No, none.
So he's like
He,
Elizabeth Warren.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
pretends to be
He's
Native
kind of
American.
lightly joked for years, like, oh, I have Native American, maybe I can get free education, or
Yeah.
maybe I can like qualify for some of these other
Register.
things. Yeah, obviously with that percentage you can't, but no. And he had a pretty after, well, so that was 28%. I think he was also close to like 30% English Irish, so he's got
Hmm.
that in him too.
So y'all are cousins
We
too.
are, yeah, we are. Yeah, at least second cousins once removed, and so I was trying to learn all of that stuff too. But yeah, no,
So
we've
interesting.
got all that in there, all that
So
European.
I want to do the 23andMe. I did one of the early on ones that did not include Native American in their whatever, their
Yeah,
results. And so I have heard my entire life, and if you could see me right now, like I have black hair and I look very much like there's something going on that is
yeah.
ethnic. And so the story's always been that it's Native American, and I've like, the story is very much like your great grandmother was on a reservation and met your great grandfather. And it's been a very specific story. However, I recently, in the last few years, kind of tried to find on ancestry.com information and could not find any information, which that's not abnormal. But in the searching, I found this statistic that said a lot of white people who were working on the land that Native Americans were on and they wanted to be using the land would lie and say they had Native American ancestry or Native American bloodlines to gain favor with the Native American tribes. And so these stories would then get passed down the line often because they were trying to keep the peace while they were working. And so I wonder if that's true for Brooks, if that story goes back something like that. And I'm actually really curious if that is the case for me as well. I really want to do the 23andMe, just $200. So
Okay, yeah, I wasn't going to pay that much money. When Amazon did their Prime Day, we got a deal on that day. It was only $100 a test. So
oh,
that's
okay.
why we did it. I know, because for you
Maybe Cyber
wanted
Monday.
to, yeah, keep an eye out for it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't justify the $200 because it was like, obviously, I mean, it doesn't change your life. If you're looking for real health information, you should probably go to a doctor and get real genetic testing done and not rely on an online service. I mean, it's good. And they tell you some funny, really funny things about your health too. And once you're in I mean, even your 30s, but I think when you're in your 30s or 40s and you see these results and it's telling you, you have a genetic predisposition to be a light sleeper. Really? I had no idea. Thank you. Got that. So I just paid
Yeah.
$100 for you to tell me something that I experience every night. And or you have a 70% genetic predisposition to have detached earlobes. Oh, got it. Knew that one. Thanks.
Noticed.
But
You can
it's
roll your tongue.
exactly. But it is really funny to see those things and what they either guess or assume based on your DNA. So
Yeah. Does it tell you your Enneagram type?
that would be easy because I mean, I'm 99% sure I'm a 1 now, but definitely in those days when I was vacillating between a 1 and a 6, it would have been really helpful to just look at my DNA. And
Yeah.
they will tell you some kind of health predictors. And the only
Okay.
negative, and also because I have looked at my parents and my grandparents, the negative thing that I got was that I have a likelihood to develop late onset Alzheimer's. Well, I knew that too. Like I watched both
Yeah.
of my dad's parents develop it in their, late 60s, early 70s. And so
Hmm.
it's not shocking. And things like that don't bother me. Like I don't
Yeah.
worry like, oh my gosh, like what am I going to do? I need to take some kind of, or join some kind of, like a lab study or whatever
Yeah.
and be part of this test group.
Yeah.
It's fine.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I wonder how many people get it and then freak out of like, great, now I'm going to die of all these
Yeah.
things.
Enneagram sixes probably should not do something like this. That would be torture for the
Yeah.
rest of your life.
I had a friend who did it and she ended up like making a lot of dietary changes because of her possibilities of having stuff. And I thought, oh, it's kind of a bummer if, yeah, you had the possibility, but you don't. But then you made all these changes, right? Because it's just telling you a likelihood. It's not telling you an
Right.
actual thing. And then if it's like you're more likely than not, does that mean 51%? Are we talking 85? What are we
Yeah.
talking?
And some of them do give you percentages like that, and they have multiple options to where it's like, so they talk about your weight and they say genetically you are predisposed to be either a normal weight, underweight, overweight, and then they'll give you like percentages of those. And yeah, I agree with you. It's very surface level. And if you are
Hmm.
concerned about something in your parents or your DNA, you should go for more testing and not
Yeah.
make a whole bunch of changes just based on this. But
So
it's a
I
good
don't know if you
start.
remember this, but I think it was Angelina Jolie who had the genetic marker for
And
breast
just
cancer.
whoosh,
Yeah,
yep,
and she
chopped them
just said,
off.
"Let's get it out."
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Like, I'm curious, do you feel like that's the right thing to do? What about if you have daughters? Do you go, "Hey, Let's get them out.
Yeah, I think specifically talking about cancer is a very interesting topic. I feel like if I actually, I don't even know if I would, well, okay, let's say if my mom had cancer, if she did, she never has, and maybe her mom as well. And I just felt like this is probably going to happen to me. So let's see what I can do in a preventive measure. I think I would do the same thing because it's like, okay, honestly, like boobs are a little aesthetic when
Mm-hmm.
if you're done having kids or if you're not having kids. And yes, they're nice from an aesthetic standpoint, but
Yeah.
also they're very utilitarian. And if you are not using them for the reasons that they are meant for, whatever.
Yeah.
But I also have, maybe it is a little bit of six in me. I've definitely thought through scenarios of what would I do if I got sick or if I got cancer. And I like
Yeah.
asking people because per, everyone's journey is different. And I'm not criticizing any choices that anyone makes for their method of treatment. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
I would not do chemotherapy. And I decided that a few years ago. I just wouldn't want to put that in my body. I think there are other ways to approach cancer, and I feel like if I didn't make it, if I just went the health, the natural route,
Yeah.
and with oils and foods and whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
it didn't work, I'm actually okay with that. And that's a
I
little
don't know
morbid.
if
It's more morbid than a lot of people can handle.
I don't know this if this podcast ever makes it on the air or not, but
Wait, what was
to
our thing that we were talking about? Oh, do the minimum and
do
how to get
the
away with
minimum.
it.
Okay, well let's go with do the minimum with this cancer thing. So two cancer stories. My dad got cancer and we didn't know about it because he never went to the doctor. So we found out about it when we diagnosis, you've got a couple months to live. And so the doctor said, you got a couple months to live, but there's this really aggressive treatment. If you do it today, you do this surgery, we do this like crazy chemo blast thing to your cancer, you could get another 5 to 15 years out of it. And so my dad said yes. None of us got to consult, think about it or anything because the guy was like, it's got to be today. And he did. And the second this was over, my dad was never himself again and he died a couple months later. But if for all intents and purposes, he died that day because he was no longer himself. We were no longer communicating with my dad. So, and then he passed away. So that's the one kind of scenario.
How long ago was that?
This was 11 years ago.
Okay.
Wait, yeah, 11 years ago. 11 years ago in July. 10 years ago this past July. Anyway, so then my mom, a few years later, meets this guy. They start dating and they break up. But right after they break up, he gets diagnosed with stage 4 throat cancer. They said, "Hey, you've got 2 months to live. You're not going to live for 2 more months." And so he came to my mom and he said, "Listen, I'm all alone. You've done this before. Can I please move in with you for the last 2 months of my life? Will you take care of me? I don't know who else to ask." So
Wow.
if you know my mom, she's a 2 on the Enneagram.
Oh, so
She's like
sorry.
has taken in strays her whole life and she says yes to having this guy come. Well, because it's on his throat, he got radiation at first. They were trying to treat it, and he could not eat at all because of the radiation had burned his throat. So he had a feeding tube. So they sent him home with this 24 case or 85 case, whatever it was, of Ensure, the little Ensure
Yeah.
cans that you could pour into there for him to get food. That's what his food was. Well, my mom was like, "Listen, if you're going to die in 2 months, I'm not giving you this." Man, my mom's a nutrition consultant, and so she just started dumping all sorts of natural everything in there, green juices, vitamins, all sorts of crazy. She'd blend stuff in the Vitamix, pour it in there. Well, pretty soon, every time they were doing the radiation or chemo, he was vomiting it up immediately. So they were like, "We can't treat you anymore. No more treatment. Just go home. Like, best wishes. We'll probably not ever see you again." 2 months later, he goes in for his PET scan, cancer free, zero cancer in his body. And they were
Wow.
like, what is going on? This is crazy. So they did another full PET scan again because they were like, no, this isn't what happened. And he's in remission. He's never had anything come back again whatsoever. He moved out of my mom's house, went and got married to somebody else,
Oh, that's so
kicking.
cool.
Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
Well, I definitely think that, and this is not to get woo woo, but when you have a positive outlook and a good attitude, that really does impact your physiological body. And so I for sure think that that's why everyone needs to choose a method of treatment that they're comfortable with. Because
Yeah.
let's say you choose chemo, but you're still terrified of it, that the stress of those negative feelings is going to impact your body. Or
Yeah.
if you say, okay, well, I'm not going to do chemo, but then you go the natural route, but you're still panicking, wondering if you made the right decision. I
Yeah.
think that those feelings have an impact too. So you have to choose. But for me, I'm definitely on board with that. All,
Yeah.
organic vegetables and oils and whatever. I
CBD.
yeah, but I also, yeah, CBD. I
Mhm.
also don't want to live a long time. So maybe that's also why I'm okay with it. And like, oh,
I'll be
well,
carrying the podcast on into 100.
right. Yeah. And you'll say, Rachel, she did the minimum.
She
She
did
didn't, but she didn't get
the
away with it.
she didn't get away with it. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. We'll have to change the name
Yeah.
of the show again.
I think that most people probably end up doing the combination, right? Of going, I don't want to say no to this powerful thing that most people are doing, chemotherapy, but I also don't want to discount all of the crazy stuff that all these, I mean, having a first account story like I do is really hard to ignore. It's easier to ignore when you know someone who knows someone who knows someone, but when you know the someone, it's like, okay, well, there's something there. Something happened. I should pay attention to that. So I have a friend who's been in and out of the hospital her whole life, and she's never really gone the natural route, and she's 35, and so she's like, I think I'm going to try acupuncture, and I think I'm going to try plant-based eating, and I think I'm going to try to add these other things while I'm also still doing all the stuff I've been doing through the hospital and through my doctor. And I was like, oh, I like that. I like that idea of saying, could there be an addition here?
I have heard that even some Western doctors are, I know that there are other types of treatments too, whether it's a chelation type thing, lots of
Mm-hmm.
infusions of vitamins. So
We are
clearly,
nutritionists,
I was going to say,
professional
clearly, we
nutritionists.
didn't even go to Wikipedia for our research on this. This was not a planned conversation. We actually had a guest scheduled for today. So this is us
Yeah.
riffing. Sorry.
She was
This
not going to
is
talk about
going.
cancer.
No. Cancer and Angelina Jolie. What made her? Whatever. I don't know how that popped up in our
Boobs.
conversation. That's pretty funny.
That's so
For that,
great.
I think that's it. This one's going to be a short one.
Yep.
Yeah, 15, 20 minutes. Here we are. This is what we do on a
This
weeknight
is
when
how we do it.
Mikala is avoiding her family. She's trying to get out of cooking dinner.
Trying to
I
tell if
don't know
they've
what
already
I'm
made it
doing.
yet, so I don't have to go in there.
Yeah, I ate so much for lunch. I'm not going to have to eat again for a couple days. So I'm good tonight.
Couple days. You're like
I'm like a
you're
camel right
floating in the
now. I
bathtub.
am. I do. My digestive system's not going to work. That's why I'm not going to have to eat. So TMI, everyone.
TMI.
You heard it
I'm
right
doing the
here.
minimum.
Doing the minimum, eating the foods I know I shouldn't be, and expecting different results.
You're so smart.
Well, there we go. I promise we'll come back with something a little deeper and more meaningful next time. Maybe we'll even research it.
Maybe.
Adios.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.